We will now move to the list of questions which we have received from various member states. The first question is from Ecuador. We congratulate India for presenting its voluntary national review for the second time and commend its whole of society approach to incorporate comprehensive perspectives. We look with interest your efforts to eradicate multidimensional poverty, ensure sanitation and universal health coverage, raise funds to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, foster social inclusion and sustainable economic growth, promote South-South cooperation and fulfill climate action strategies. In regard to this topic, your Vienna highlights that India is leading efforts on climate action with International Solar Alliance, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, and PM Modi's announcement of achieving the target of 450 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030 at the Climate Action Summit. How do you think India will fare in this regard? And how would these initiatives ensure that renewable energy is accessible to the poor? I thank Ecuador for the question.
India's ambitious renewable energy targets set out by the Honorable PM have been matched by commendable progress in the last 6 years. The increase in renewable energy capacity by 75% since 2014 is testament to that fact. We have made the global pledge as part of our nationally determined contributions to have 40% of cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel sources. This is presently at 35.86%. This translates to approximately 140 gigawatts. In the same time period, through aggressive investment in energy infrastructure, we have universalized access to household electricity and reached those who had been left behind. This has simultaneously taken place by achieving levels of cost-efficient renewable energy such that India's renewable energy cost has become the lowest in the Asia-Pacific region. Our decentralized solar photovoltaic application programs are promoting off-grid decentralized energy solutions and encouraging innovation in sustainable business models. These efforts, among other reforms, have consolidated India's position in the world as the third most attractive country for renewable energy investment in 2019.
The second question is from Bangladesh. India has done some commendable work in the area of financial inclusion. Has this resulted in the consequent empowerment of women? I thank Bangladesh for their question.
Financial inclusion received a momentous thrust with the launch of the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, widely expanding the reach for the poor for the bank accounts. The Prime Minister Jan Dhan Yojana, launched in August 2014, added 386 million new accounts in the last 4 years. 54% of these were owned by women, and rupees 80,000 crore have been deposited in it. The gender gap, therefore, has come down from 19.8% in 2014 to 6.4% in 2017. The JAM Trinity, which is the Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile phone Trinity, have now 1.2 billion unique social identity numbers, are 900 million mobile phones, and 487 schemes have been transferred for direct benefit transfer with the use of the JAM Trinity. This has also enabled access of 120 million farmers to Prime Minister's Kisan Yojana funds, which were transferred at the same time in May this year. The best proof of the financial inclusion is that under the Prime Minister's Mudra program, which gives loans to small and medium enterprises, 75% of these loans have been given to women. I think financial inclusion has come a long way in the last 6 years because of the initiative taken by the Prime Minister under his various schemes.
We have also received a list of questions from the UN Secretariat which have been flagged by the major group of other stakeholders. I will read out the questions. The first question is, the voice of local communities in processes that prepared the VNRs and planning for achieving the SDGs need to be further strengthened in the country. What are the concrete and measurable steps that the Government of India is taking for an inclusive approach to achieving the SDGs? We have a question on similar lines from Ms. Annie Namalan, the convener of the Vada Natodo Abhiyan, a network of CSOs.
Given that the COVID-19 pandemic enhances the vulnerabilities of marginalized communities, we would like to know how the Government of India plans to institutionalize the partnership with civil society organizations.
We consider civil society organizations as our development partners. We actively consult them in preparing our strategies and development plans, and the strategy document produced by Niti Aayog had more than 700 such consultations. The Prime Minister has given us the mantra of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, aligned to the principle of leaving no one behind, and which is our guiding vision. Through our program, we are trying to reach the most vulnerable first. Our initiatives aimed at universal access to healthcare, financial inclusion for the poorest, increased access to electricity and clean energy, as well as access to sanitation and housing, are helping us to move forward the SDG targets. The Government of India has been an early adopter of the SDGs. The government has moved from the whole of the government to the whole of society approach. The process of preparation, India's second voluntary national review, in terms of the government's commitment towards an inclusive and participatory whole of society approach for achieving the SDGs in India. Niti Aayog, in collaboration with CSO partners, conducted national consultations with 14 population groups. This massive engagement involved over 1,000 CSOs and community organizations across the country. Their specific recommendations have been summarized in the country's VNR report. As an embodiment of our commitment to the whole of society approach, we have been actively engaging with more than 92,000 NGOs who are registered on the Darpan portal of Niti Aayog. All these NGOs are mobilized through a standing committee which is managed in the Niti Aayog and which meets quarterly so that we can follow up with all the activities that these CSOs are taken. The focus areas under this committee are aligned to the SDGs and include health and nutrition, child rights, elderly care, disaster relief, women empowerment, among others. These are all critical to realizing the goals of the 2030 agenda.
The second question here is, given the current pandemic and economic stress the country is going through, what are the plans to strengthen cooperative federalism in the country to ensure that all the states, provinces in India collaborate to achieving the national targets?
The principal mandate for Niti Aayog is cooperative federalism. This is reflected in the fact that all the chief ministers are members of our governing council. Moreover, all chief ministers are also members of the National Nutrition Mission, which is chaired by the Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog. In all situations, the chief ministers are consulted regularly. Niti Aayog interacts with them on a regular basis. Given the diversity in our country, we have to consult the chief ministers to design and implement programs specific to each state. Niti Aayog has also constituted the Niti Forum for the Northeast, which looks after all the 7 sisters in the Northeast and designs programs for them exclusively. Niti Aayog has also constituted the Himalayan Regional Council with all the 13 states so that we can design programs for all these Himalayan region states and look after the interests of the people there, which include very important environment issues, plus also the issues of women participation in the workforce and the water conservation issues. So therefore, as we can see, Niti Aayog really does pursue the agenda of cooperative federalism very seriously, as it is, as I said earlier, one of the principal mandates of the Niti Aayog when it was constituted in 2015.
Due to the limited time and the short duration of the question and answer, we could address only these few questions. We are happy to provide the answers to the rest shortly.